Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedom and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country. In the courtrooms of America, Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedom.
The IRS has announced that it's going to give a pass to churches, at least for now. Hi, I'm Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel. Joining me is Matt Barber, vice president of Liberty Counsel Action. Matt, you know, this IRS restriction that came into effect in 1954 that says that churches or 501c3 organizations, which includes a church, cannot endorse or oppose candidates for office, has been more of a scare tactic than a substantive reality, because not one church has ever lost its tax exemption anyway from that time to the present. And churches have been routinely ignoring, in many cases, even defying the IRS, and the IRS hasn't done anything to them. And it's been going on for a number of years. Now the IRS has announced that it will not be auditing churches right now. It's going to give them a temporary pass because it's going to be looking at its regulations and doing some new revisions.
There's, a short-term ramifications for this, and there are long-term ramifications. In the short term, this basically, pastors need to understand now, from the pulpit, they can become what, they might call political. It's not really political, addressing issues of morality in our culture that they happen to have politicized. However, they have put a moratorium on church audits so pastors can get as political as they want to get or as they feel led to get from the pulpit right now.
According to the IRS official, Russell Renwick, made a statement that the agency has not been auditing churches because it has no authority to do so since the necessary regulations have not been approved. This is according to a news report from One News Now. And also, Mr. Renwick says that there have been a number of complaints. They have been inundated with complaints about political involvement of churches, and they haven't done any audits, and apparently they're not going to be doing any audits. So at least through this election cycle, they're giving a free pass to churches. Well,
and I think it's because the IRS recognizes that they don't have the authority here, Matt. As you know, churches are tax exempt inherently. They don't need a letter of tax exemption. They, just by virtue of becoming a church, they are tax exempt. So how could the IRS yank a church's tax exempt status? The only thing they could do would be to shut down the church, but they can't shut down a church because that would be a gross violation of the First Amendment. So really, the IRS here they're being asked to do something by groups like People for the American Way and Americans United that they have no authority to do, and that is to penalize churches for political activity.
And that's why no church in the history of America has ever lost its tax exemption. The only one that lost its letter actually took out full-page ads in the USA Today and Washington Times newspaper opposing then Governor Bill Clinton. But even that church, although it lost its letter, a letter that it voluntarily obtained, not one that it had to obtain, did not lose its tax exemption. It continued to remain tax exempt because what you do on Sunday or what you do on any one day does not carry over to the next day. If you're not endorsing candidates on Monday, but you did on Sunday, well, Monday's a brand new day for a church because unlike other nonprofits, churches are tax exempt from the moment of existence. So they don't need to apply to the IRS. They don't need, like other 501c3 organizations that seek tax exemption and contributions tax deductible, they don't need the IRS's approval. So really, the IRS has no real authority over churches in this respect. I serve on a commission, and there will be a report coming out on this issue as well as other issues, and we'll wait for that report to tell you about what's in the. But this issue of churches and this restriction is one of the topics that we considered.
Well, and the IRS here, Matt, is basically what they're doing is they're running up the white flag. They're saying we surrender. We recognize that we don't have the authority to do anything to these churches. So this really just cuts the legs out from under groups like Barry Lynn's Americans United. It does away with their entire reason for existence. Basically, the IRS has said, this is toothless. Our threats of removing churches' tax-exempt status is a toothless threat, and it goes all the way back to, as you mentioned, the Johnson Amendment, 1954. That was a toothless amendment intended to intimidate pastors and churches into silence. Now the jig's up. People are starting to understand that pastors can say whatever they want to say from the pulpit. The First Amendment guarantees their right to do so.
That's right. And this is, I guess, great news for a lot of pastors who have been intimidated. We have for years at Liberty Counsel been educating pastors and churches around the country about what they can do, not what they can't do. Barry Berlin of the Americans United for Separation of Church and State, he always tries to send out these threatening letters. So the postage and the paper that he expended to send out 60,000 letters to churches this year is basically pointless. You might as well just throw them in the garbage.
Well, I've said you can line your bird cage with the letters.
Yeah, I think that's a good use for Barry Lynn's letters. And right now, I'm sure he's frustrated that the IRS has said, well, we're not going to investigate any churches. We're not going to audit them for this political activity. We don't have the authority. We don't have the regulations. So between the time that this whole election season began until the election season was over, churches have a free pass.
Well, that's right. And pastors have a duty, from my perspective, to do as the pastors of old during the American Revolution did, from the pulpit, to address these issues of morality, the culture, political issues it was the pastors who led the charge in the Revolutionary War. Pastors today need to be leading the charge. This is clear. They need to understand for the election coming up tomorrow that pastors need to understand that they can, from the pulpit, encourage their parishioners, their congregants to vote for candidates that are going to push biblical values in public policy.
Well, we've seen the unprecedented statement by the Reverend Billy Graham that has remained apolitical all of his life, not political, and yet he came out with these full-page ads that say, vote biblical values. This is the most important election of our lifetime, and probably the last, he says, for his lifetime, and we need to vote for biblical values, vote in support of Israel, vote for biblical values of the sanctity of human life, marriage, and religious liberty. Those are biblical values. Vote for those. Pastors, I think, have a duty, as you mentioned, to be the spokesperson of their community, speaking from biblical truth, being the conscience of their community. And now, of course, with a day before the election, this is historic. This is a historic turning point in the direction of America. Let it not be said that pastors or anyone listening to this program remained silent or could have done something more than what they did. I encourage everyone, whether you're a pastor, church leader, individual, I encourage you to get out the word, encourage people to vote biblical, moral values. This is a turning point in our American history and literally world history as well.
And part and parcel of all that is that pastors need to realize and need to push back against the attacks on religious freedom, period. Here we have finally the IRS acknowledging essentially that they have overstepped their bounds in the past, or that they don't have the authority to do what groups like Americans United would have them do. But more importantly, with the HHS mandate compelling Christian organizations to pay for abortifacient, sterilization, and so forth, our religious freedoms are under attack at a point higher than at any time in American history. So this is probably the most important election in history, especially as it relates to religious freedom.
Well, I just spoke yesterday for 2 services in Central Florida at a Baptist church, and then last night I spoke at a Roman Catholic church, and the Roman Catholic congregation invited me to come and speak about religious liberty. I mean, that shows you the widespread interest in this issue of the HHS mandate, which is colliding with religious liberty, which says that this federal mandate now could care less about your religious freedom. You're going to fund abortion whether you like it or not, and also contraception and sterilization, but particularly abortion. That is a line that we can't cross, and that is a clash with religious freedom. It's the reason why people of faith from all different communities of faith have risen up and said, enough is enough. And now you have an opportunity. Pastors, church leaders, even though you don't have another Sunday, you still have the ability to communicate with your people. You have a website, you have an email, you have phone banks. Encourage them to vote biblical values. People that are listening to this program, call your friends, in your state and in other states as well, and encourage them to vote biblical values. We have to make a difference this election, and we must also continually make a difference. Whatever we do, from the president all the way down to the local precinct, we need to vote those biblical values of life, marriage, religious liberty, and certainly we need to stand for Israel as well. Go to Liberty Council's website, lc.org. That's lc.org. We have a lot of voter guides right there on the front page of Liberty Council's website. Check out our new website as well. It combines all of the various ministries of Liberty Council. It's called libertycouncil.com, libertycouncil.com. You can go to either one and get information from all of our resources. I would encourage you to make a difference, pray for this country, also stand with this ministry as we continue to advance life, liberty, and family.
You have been listening to Faith and Freedom with Liberty Counsel. We hope that we have motivated you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedom. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email updates. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.